All right, boys and girls, we are on day 2 of section 5.2, inverses of functions, okay? So as promised, today we're going to do composition, and believe it or not, I enjoy composition, okay? It's not as scary, and it's pretty easy. All right, so let's move on. So I am looking at example 1 of the notes, and oh my gosh, guys, sorry. And yesterday, I showed you guys how to graph, how to find the inverse, use the table if necessary. Today, we're going to do the composition part, okay? I like to write pretty big, and I don't know if this is going to be enough room, but I'm going to attempt it, okay? So coming up, go to the top of the notes, and if you notice, it says the composition of two functions, f of x and g of x. So those are two functions written as f of g of x and read as f of g of x is a new function that uses the output of g of x as the input of f of x. Oh my gosh, what does that mean? Okay, so different books might write it differently. So let me just give you the gist of it. The reason why we do composition is basically to check if your solutions are correct. If your inverse is actually a true inverse of the original, okay? Sometimes you say, okay, I guess I did it correctly, and you're wondering, are you right? Well, you can check to see if your inverse is a true inverse of your original function by using composition, okay? So let me zoom in a bit. Yeah, let's zoom in a bit. Okay. So here it is, okay? We're going to call f of x our original function. In this case, it was 3x plus 4. Now I'm going to use a different pen, okay? And then I'm going to consider g of x. Whoa, sorry, let me take the top off. I'm going to consider g of x my inverse, okay? And I'm going to call that x minus 4 over 3, okay? And g of x is just a letter, okay? But just call this your inverse and your original function, okay? Here we go. There's two types of compositions. You can either do f of g of x or g of x. I will show you both, but when we ask you to do composition, you don't have to do both. You just do either one, okay? If you did it correctly, well, you know what? And I shouldn't say if you did it correctly. If they are true inverses, everything should cancel out and you're just left with x, okay? If something happens and it doesn't work out, then one of two things: you either did something wrong if it's a true inverse, or guess what, they're not inverses of each other, okay? So let me just kind of move that. I already know these should be inverses of each other, okay? So the first one that I'm going to do with you is f of g of x. You know what? Let me do it in a different color. F of g of x. Okay, if I run out of room, I'll do it on a separate paper. But here's what I was trying to get with using red and black ink. Normally we have f of x, but now I just wrote f of g of x. So basically what I did is I replaced g of x where the x should be. Remember that. I replaced g of x where the x should be. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So ready? 3, there's an x. I'm going to put parentheses plus 4. Because now what I'm going to do is where the x should be, I'm going to replace it with g of x. My g of x is x minus 4. Okay? Over 3. All right, so now you're going to follow order of operations. PEMDAS or GEMDAS, whatever you were learned. Okay, it's all the same. So if I follow order of operations, then we know you do whatever's inside the parentheses, but if you guys can clearly see, there's nothing to do inside. Then we're going to distribute or multiply. But guys, the rule is whenever you have a fraction and the number in the outside is the same as your denominator, the only thing that happens is they cancel out. They don't really multiply, okay? So what we're left with is x minus 4, because the 3's canceled, and then we just have plus 4. Okay, the only thing left is to combine like terms, and guess what? A minus 4 plus a 4 just cancel each other out. So all we're left with is x. And we wanted x. We should have gotten x because we know that these are true inverses. So the fact that everything canceled out and we were left with x, that means we did it correctly. Okay, so f of g of x gave me x, and that works. That's awesome. Okay. Oh, I apologize if my camera is shaky. All right, so now I'm going to give you the second composition. But again, my disclaimer is from now on, whenever I ask you for give me a composition, you choose whichever one you like, okay? And I would say stick to one and that's it, okay? It really doesn't matter which one you use. All right, so for the next one, I'm going to use G of, you know what? G of f of x, okay? Let me move that over here. So now what I've done is I replace where x should be, I replace it with f of x, okay? So let me use a black pen this time so it doesn't overlap, okay? I tend to write big. So if you recall, my original g function was x minus 4, but wherever there's an x, we're going to substitute with your f of x function. So x minus 4 over 3. And what I'm going to plug in here is now 3x plus 4. Okay? All right. Order of operations, guys. So inside the parentheses, there's nothing to simplify. There's nothing to multiply. So we're going to subtract. So I could just drop the parentheses. So 3x plus 4 minus 4 will just give me 3x. Over 3 is just x. So whether I do f of g of x or g of f of x, I still get x on both sides. And that's composition. Okay? It could be scary or a little intimidating at first, but if you really look, the only thing you did was the first part, I just substitute. The second part simplified and then just isolated x. Okay? Substitute, simplify, isolated x. So there's not much to it, guys. All right, let's do one more together. Okay, so the next one that I'm going to do with you is our second example, B, and that was on the next page. So here's my f of x, and here's my inverse, f inverse of x, okay? So remember what I said, choose a composition, okay? Either choose f of g of x, okay, or g of f of x. You do not have to do both. You just choose, okay? So I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to have you guys practice and do this one, okay? All right, so let's get started. So f, and again, I'm just going to color code for now so you can follow along. F of g of x. So I'm still going to call my inverse g of x, okay? So here we go. 2x, but where x should be, we're going to substitute minus 2. So this is kind of how I follow it, okay? And then I'm going to substitute where x is x over 2 plus 1. So just to remind you, on this one, I ended up simplifying it. So I ended up separating my denominator into both terms. So I ended up with x over 2 plus 1, okay? So remember that. So when you multiply by 2, I'm going to distribute, and the 2 in the denominator will cancel out. So I'm just left with x, and I actually have to distribute that 2. So it'll be plus 2 minus 2. And then, of course, the 2's will cancel out. So I'm just left with x. All right, that's it, guys. All right, so now do me a favor. Pause the video right now. Try g of f of x, and then come back for the solution. Okay? All right, do it now. All right, boys and girls, if you did it correctly, this is what you should have gotten. 2x minus 2 over 2 plus 1. And then all I did here was just separate the denominator. So 2x over 2 minus 2 over 2 plus 1. And of course, this simplified to x minus 1 plus 1. Combined like terms, and I ended up with x. All right, awesome. So now I'm going to have you guys try one more on your own. So if you go to the very back example, this was the your turn. I want you guys to try both this time, okay? So do me a favor. Please try f of g of x and try g of f of x. Try both. Please try them. Do as much as you can. Wherever you get stuck, come back and see the solution. If you still don't get it, then come back to the chat and ask me and I can go over anything with you, okay? So pause the video right now and try both. All right, boys and girls, so these are the solutions to both compositions. Hopefully you got in both. And again, I want to emphasize you do not need to do both compositions every single time. You choose one. But remember, if they are true compositions, you should only end up with x. If you don't end up with x, remember, it could be one of two scenarios. Either they are not true inverses or you did something wrong, okay? And if they ask you, can you please check if these two are inverses of each other? You are checking if they are inverses. So that means they could be inverse or they may not be, okay? So again, that's just another way of checking. All right, boys and girls, go ahead and start on your homework. And again, check in if you need help.